Change the sound, need a renovation. Change the sound, need a renovation. Sound needed renovation.
Music brings us together, even when we're apart. That's why we support Canadian musicians, festivals, and award shows. It's just one of the ways TD's Ready commitment helps build a more inclusive tomorrow.
That this event and the Halifax Pride Festival take place in Mi'kma'ki, the ancestral and unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq people. This territory is covered under the treaties of peace and friendship with the Wabanaki people. We recognize that reconciliation requires action in support of words. We commit to working with and supporting Indigenous communities, and we are committed to identifying and uprooting all systems of oppression. We are all treaty people.
Hello, My name is Stephen Cook, and I'm with the Halifax Pride Board. Halifax Pride is dedicated to providing space that is accessible, inclusive, and free from oppression, harassment, and discrimination. In this space, we will treat each other with respect and dignity, regardless of age, race, gender expression, gender identity, sexual orientation, levels of ability, and all our other diverse identities. Halifax Pride stands in solidarity with the Black Lives Matter movement to end police brutality and violence against Black communities across North America. African Nova Scotians and Black people have the right to live free from oppression, violence, and systemic marginalization. Halifax Pride recognizes our history and ongoing contribution to the marginalization of QT/BIPOC. Since the beginning and to this day, the queer movement remains a protest against systems of oppression, including those that disenfranchise Black, Indigenous, and people of color. As such, Halifax Pride commits to three things. First, actively operating in a more anti-racist and anti-oppressive framework by prioritizing QT/BIPOC voices and leadership in our spaces. Please visit our website to see some of our ongoing initiatives championing, supporting, and working with QT/BIPOC. Secondly, holding ourselves accountable and allowing queer individuals to also hold us accountable for our shortcomings. We commit to engaging in discussion and following the leadership of traditionally marginalized and disenfranchised queer individuals. Throughout this year's festival, you may reach out to any one of the board members to provide comments or express concerns that you may have. We have also set up an anonymous survey to provide feedback for all events. Please visit our link on the screen or go to our website to complete the survey. And lastly, supporting Black, Indigenous, and people of color and their leaders in actions calling on government and organizations to create meaningful change, such as adopting policies that begin to dismantle systems of oppression. This year, Halifax Pride has required that all corporations who wish to participate in Pride must sign an agreement to support QT/BIPOC in several ways. The agreement has been published on our website and is available for the public. Thank you.
Great. Hi, I'm Jacquie Gahagan. I'd like to welcome you to this panel called Making the Case for LGBT Seniors History, which will focus on the development of the Nova Scotia Department of Seniors funded project called Nova Scotia LGBT Seniors Archive. My name is Jacquie Gahagan. Just to give you a sense of who I am, I'm 6 feet tall, blue eyes, brown hair. I'm wearing a checkered shirt and gray shorts and flip-flops. It's 30 degrees here, so that's the best I could do today. I'd like to thank Halifax Pride for the opportunity to share with you some of the work we're doing on this project. As a faculty member at Dalhousie University, I would like to start by also acknowledging that Dalhousie University is located in Mi'kma'ki, the ancestral and unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq, and that we're all treaty people. Now, before I involve the panelists in this discussion, I want to provide you with a little bit of background information on the origins of our project, which was, as I said, funded through the Nova Scotia Department of Seniors through what they call their Age-Friendly Communities Grants Program. This funding is aimed at supporting the planning and collaboration of projects that enable older Nova Scotians to connect to community life and to social and other activities for older adults across the province of Nova Scotia. In addition, SHIFT, which is Nova Scotia's action plan for an aging population, focuses on valuing, promoting, supporting, and engaging with a whole variety of older adults and their contributions across our province. So the funding that made these initiatives, including this one that we're talking to you about today, possible, it's important to note that in the context of Nova Scotia, we have one of the oldest aging populations in Canada. And in fact, by 2030, there'll be an estimated 260,000 Nova Scotians aged 65 years and older in the province, which has a total of under 1 million people. It can be argued that this significant demographic shift provides us with an important opportunity to take note of and to celebrate the various contributions our older populations have made and continue to make in our communities. However, what's often absent from discussions on aging demographics in Canada are the various contributions our older LGBTQ2SI or rainbow communities have made and continue to make in advancing the rights and freedoms we all enjoy today. However, we also know that ageism, homophobia, transphobia, and other negative attitudes and stereotypes about us can perpetuate the idea that getting older means you don't matter anymore. And this is further compounded by the lack of social inclusion of our older LGBTQ2SI rainbow community members in a variety of ways, such as our absence from policies, from programs, and other initiatives aimed at older populations. So one way we propose that we can overcome this erasure or systematic invisibility is by making our history known more broadly through publicly accessible activities and archives such as the one that we're going to be talking about today. So in fact, the Dalhousie University Killam Archives have welcomed the opportunity to support, sustain, and grow the Nova Scotia LGBT Seniors Archive. So in a nutshell, the purpose of our 2-year Nova Scotia Department of Seniors funded project is to develop a digitized and publicly accessible archive of the various contributions made by our older LGBT Nova Scotians and to provide a platform to increase awareness, social interaction, and community involvement from an intergenerational perspective. With funding support for this project, we've been able to hire both an older member and a younger member of the Rainbow community to work together to seek archival materials from across Nova Scotia from older, that is to say, baby boomers or those who are 55 years of age and older, and to process them for inclusion in the archive. I'll let Lydia and Dan speak about their work in this regard in just a minute, but I wanted to leave you with the following information about our upcoming events this fall. In conjunction with Dalhousie University, we'll be hosting an event in October 2020 to showcase some of the materials that we have in the archive. And we'll also be holding an event in partnership with Nocturne, also related to the archive. Now, in keeping with the theme that documenting and preserving our history matters, we'll also be co-hosting a free online viewing of Reel in the Closet by film producer Stu Maddox and his husband Joe Applebaum on August the 1st. So both Stu and Joe will be present online, of course, for a Q&A session following the viewing of this film. These are all free and accessible events, and we hope that you will join us. I'm now going to turn the floor over to Dan. Dan, if you could just give a little intro to yourself and then tell us a little bit about the work that you're doing with the archive, that would be great. Thanks, Dan.
Certainly. Hi, I'm Dan McKay. In terms of history, in terms of myself, I'm 6 foot in my 50s. I just had my 57th birthday yesterday, as a matter of fact. And I've been active in the Q community in Nova Scotia since the mid-80s approximately. Sometimes you'll see me written up and described as an activist. I don't really consider myself an activist. I support activists, and what I consider myself to be mostly is a publisher. So what I've been doing is connecting the voices of people who have important things to say, people who need to change the world to an audience for a long time. In the name of that, for about 25 years, I published a magazine called Waves. That doesn't mean I wrote for it. In fact, I wrote very, very, very little. What I did was coordinate the money and the writers and the publish and the printers and the advertisers so that we got this paper magazine out for about 25 years. And it's still kind of sort of online now, no longer a paper version. My current main big publishing project is the Halifax Rainbow Encyclopedia, which is has a page for every person, place, thing, and event of relevance to the Q community in Halifax and Nova Scotia ever. Starting with Oscar Wilde's visit to Halifax in 1892. We have a story about that, and we have a story about a lot of things. We have about 500,000 words online and room for lots more words. So if you've got a story to tell, I have a place to put it. Get in contact. In the process of doing all that publishing, I've been talking to a lot of people who were actually doing the work of the activism, and I think that's one of the reasons that I'm involved in this project. So I know lots of people, and so now I've got the honor of going out and reaching out to these people and saying, hey, when you're downsizing, when you're writing your will, please look at the materials that you have in your basement, look at the materials that you have in your closet, and let's get them out in a place where they can be accessed by future historians and future researchers. So that's what the Archives Project is about. It's about getting Nova Scotians LGBT materials over the past, since the 1960s into a place where they're safe and they can be accessed by everyone. We typically do networking among people. So we'll say, do you know anyone in your area who might have stuff? And we contact those people. And then we figure out what their needs are in terms of the donation to the archives and what they have. And we go and collect them. And we also at the same time collect them telling a story about their stuff. And their stories are to me as interesting as the things themselves. A lot of people think of archives as being filled with paper. We have a lot of paper for sure. If societies have minutes and reports and lots of documentation of the things they're doing, the society bylaws and things like that. But we also have lots of other stuff. And so when you're thinking about what you might have in your closet or in your basement, don't think just of the paper, think of the things. So for instance, we are totally happy to get video in whatever format. We have access to any kind of machine that can convert video to be digitized. There's a lot of audio online, and so we collect everything from audio tapes. One of the deals that we make with people is that if you have something on an audio format that you may not have access to playing right now, give it to us. We'll digitize it and we'll get you back an MP3, and we've gotten some really exciting stuff that way. We've gotten materials that of music organizations that have recordings of stuff, and no one's heard those recordings for decades. And we have the ability to give them access to it.
Dan, I have a comment here.
Yeah.
From Dylan, who says, I loved Waves. I used to secretly read it while closeted in university. Big hearts.
That's lovely. Yeah. Oh, and so we're collecting many complete runs of Waves. So the great news is lots of people collected Waves, and we have a lot of these online. We have there's a complete run of these in the Nova Scotia archives. There'll be a complete run of these, I think, nearby in the LGBT archive, Nova Scotia LGBT archives. Over the 2.5 decades or so, lots of people would get their Waves, read it, and put it in a box, and we're getting lots of those boxes. So if you need to downsize, we'll certainly take them. We'll do something good with them. The extra copies of these will probably be turned into some kind of an art project. So we'll figure out something to do with them.
Can you remind people how they can reach you if they want to make a contribution of materials?
The easiest way is to email to, I'll say it slowly, NS LGBT Archives with an S, NS LGBT Archives @gmail.com. That's a quick way. Or if you want to reach, the other indirect way is if you search for gay Halifax and any topic, you'll be dropped into the Halifax Rainbow Encyclopedia, and there's a contact at the bottom of every page there. I don't know whether you've noticed or not, but we do a lot of buttons. Whenever we do an event, whenever we do a protest, whenever we do a march, whenever we do an art show, someone makes buttons, and we have a lot of buttons. So we get buttons in two ways. One of them is people collect buttons. And so we have lots of people who went to every Pride since the late 80s and got that Pride button and collected them, and they'll give us the box of those buttons. Method A. Method B, of course, is that we're talking to a lot of organizers of events, and they often have a lot of buttons left over at the end of the event. And so we're getting lots of boxes of buttons. Those things too are going to get turned into exhibits and art projects. So the stuff that you're donating, even if it's a duplicate of something that we already have, is not going to go to waste. And just as an illustration, we have quite a few of these. These are, this is a bus poster. So I don't know if buses still have them, but in years ago, when you got on the bus, above your head, there was about a strip about 30 centimeters tall and about a meter wide that had advertising on it. And in 1996, Halifax Pride made the extremely bold move to buy advertising space on the buses. It was an outrageous thing to do at the time, and it was enormously successful. And we had maybe 100 of these posters made. Not all of them got used. Some of them got ripped down. I don't know how you do that on a bus, but some of them got ripped down. We replaced them. But and then afterwards, a lot of people got them as keepsakes. So we've got a big stack of these as duplicates. And so these are getting reused, again, as art projects. And a few of them appeared in the Elderberries March last weekend, a couple of them. A lot of things in our community, people take pictures of them. And so we've got, I don't know. We've got somewhere between 20 and 40,000 photographs to deal with. Here's an album from an organization called the Safe Harbor Metropolitan Community Church. And this is a scrapbook. This isn't really a photo album. This is a scrapbook that was made up to commemorate the end of the organization and given to one of the organizers, who then donated it to us. So what we've done, you'll notice that there are Post-its on a lot of these photos. We can do that because these images are in sleeves. So when we're putting the Post-its on, we won't be damaging the original material. The Post-its have captions on them. It happens that this photo album and many that we deal with don't have, are not captioned. So we don't know who is in the photo. We don't know what the event is. We don't know where it's taken. We can guess. So what we'll do is we'll have a party, a get together, and a bunch of people around tables with a bunch of photo albums and a bunch of Post-its like this, and we'll get people to ID these. This is important because the people who can identify the photos in old photo albums are getting on in years, and at some point we won't have them to say who is in this picture and what are they doing and what's the event.
And Dan, that was actually the next question I had for you, is why take this on now? Why is this important to do now? You've sort of answered that, but was there anything else you wanted to include?
A little bit. Involves a little bit of math, Jackie. What we have is the LGBT movement in Halifax. The activists really decided that something was needed we needed activism here in Halifax very shortly after Stonewall in 1969 in New York. And so in 1970, 1971, people started talking about what we were going to do here in an organized fashion. And by 1972, only 3 years after Stonewall, we had a running organization here doing things like we had a telephone counseling service where you could call in, and that ran for 30, 35 or 40 years. It was called the Gay Line. I worked on it some, but if you do the math, all the people who were activists in 1972, 1973, 1970 were, you know, between say 19 and 25 years old. And if you do the math, these people are getting ready to downsize and move out of their homes and move into smaller homes. What materials they have are probably not going to get taken to their smaller homes. And so, we also want to be getting them to tell their stories while their memories are sharp.
And thanks for that, Dan. Can you also talk a little bit about where is most of the archival material currently coming from? Because this is meant to be, the Nova Scotia LGBT Seniors Archive is meant to sort of cut across all of the province of Nova Scotia, not just in HRM. Could you describe a little bit of what we have so far in the last year you've been working on this?
Like most of the activism around the province, a great deal of it happened in Halifax, but not at all exclusively. And we've gotten, there was some very interesting things going on in Kentville and Wolfville. So we've got some materials from there, specifically with Acadia University. We've collected some stuff from the South Shore, and there's a lot more to do there. They're on the to-do list. And we have a lot of material ready to go in Cape Breton, because Cape Breton has a long history of activism, and there's some really exciting stuff coming from there. So really, we have contact all over the province, but the bulk of it is coming from Halifax. A great deal is coming, and it's all coming from individuals. It's from people who are involved with organizations, mostly, and materials that were from the LGBT organization, which in the early days was called GAE, the Gay Alliance for Equality, and then later on was called GALA, the Gay and Lesbian Alliance. And so we've got lots of materials from them, and many other organizations that have come and gone over the years.
Great, thanks for that.
Yeah, so the process that we go through is we'll collect them and collect the material, and but first we have a discussion with the person about how the specific requirements there. So if you have specific requirements about how you're going to donate the stuff, maybe you don't want it accessible for a certain number of years, et cetera, that's all negotiable. So if you're holding back on stuff because you think, you know, there's some reason for it, contact us and we'll work something out. The upshot is, if you have some stuff, give it to us and we'll do the right thing with it. So you can see that I'm doing a lot of the work of connecting with people. We also have a professional archivist who is working with me, Lydia, who is making sure that I'm doing all the right things and crossing all of the T's and dotting every single I, and I'm so grateful for that. And we have Lydia here as well to tell us about the mechanics and the process of doing things right in archives. Lydia, do you want to start with a little introduction of yourself?
Hi, my name's Lydia Hunsberger. I'm a queer femme, about 5'8", brown hair, glasses, and I'm wearing a floral shirt. So I'm a recent graduate of Dalhousie's Master of Library and Information Studies program, and I hopped on this program last May when I was just finishing up my first year, because growing up as a queer person in rural Ontario, I didn't have a lot of access to queer history, and especially local queer history. And I see a really big need for and desire for younger queer people to want to know their history and want to know where they come from. And without archives and without local history projects, that information just simply isn't as accessible as it should be. So Dan collects all of this materials, and it's usually in boxes. We get it in bags, we get it in plastic totes, garbage bags, crates, like really just everything. And then I'll either go over to Dan's arrange a pickup. And then my job is to go through the materials and really just assess what we actually have that's been donated to us. So sometimes it is photographs, so I'll go through the albums and make sure that the labels on the albums line up with what we have on our donation slip, and really just try to gather all the information of what we have. And then my job is also to remove those things if they're in something that is damaging to the material. So in the case of photographs, some of the albums that photographs are kept in can be really damaging to the photographs. So my job is to remove those and rehouse them safely so that the materials are preserved and that they won't be deteriorating. Similarly with newspapers, those degrade really fast. So the process is to digitize them and then keep the copies online and remove the physical newspapers from the folders, because they will turn all of the other papers and materials in the folder yellow and really just ruin them. And it's a bad show all around.
Lydia, can you talk a little bit about the sort of, so you're using the Canadian standard for archiving materials. So this is why everything that's being donated is being processed through the Killam library and sort of adhering to that national standard. Could you describe a little bit more about why that's important?
Yeah, so when I'm processing materials, I'm processing them into a database, and it is through the Dalhousie University Archives. So if anybody is familiar with searching an archives catalog or searching the Dal archives, they will eventually be accessible on that website. And the standards that I'm using are really just helpful in helping researchers know what to look for and helping to organize the information and really maintain custodial history, and so that if I'm looking at something, I know not only where it came from, but like how many people it's been through, if it's been reorganized, if it's changed hands a lot. And that's really helpful for researchers, because if you're getting something from an organization that's gone through several different owners, there may have been some reordering of materials in that, and that can affect how all of those materials are, how they're interpreted.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Does that answer that question?
It does. And then I had another question about if somebody wants to gift materials to the Killam, if you could describe the sort of, and Dan, you sort of alluded to this, but what's the process for the deed of gift, or somebody wants to gift a box full of unknown materials? Can you describe that?
Right. So ideally you'd get in contact with one of us, so myself, Dan, or Jacquie, and we would arrange a time to pick up the materials. We would go through the materials with the donor to make sure that we have an idea of what is being donated. In that form, we usually have how many boxes, what those boxes are, all the donor contact information, and then also a brief description of why it's important. And then also at this time when we're going through these materials, as Dan kind of alluded to earlier, if you are donating photographs or any other materials like that, we're going through them and making sure that they have the information that's required for us to make a meaningful archival record. So if you're donating photographs or meeting minutes, but they don't have dates or organization names, it really loses a lot of value, because we can't place when these events happened or where they came from. So after all of that is taken care of, the university archivist would reach out to the donor and arrange a deed of gift. And this is the legal document that would transfer the materials from the donor to the university archives. So then once the deed of gift is happening, the donation gets assigned what's called an accession number, and that's just a unique identifier so that we know where those materials are going to be located in the archives. And then after that, the material gets passed along to me, and I start taking it out of the boxes and out of the binders and putting it into folders and putting them into coroplast boxes. And then they go on the shelves and into our finding aid. And then in October, when the finding aid launches, all of those materials will be fully searchable.
Great, thanks very much for that, Lydia. And I noticed you've got a couple of photo, yeah, great. Can you tell us a little bit about what's happening there? That's from 1997, and the other one you have in 1997 as well.
Yeah, I just picked these up from Dan the other day, and I haven't really had a chance to go through them yet. So these are some photos stuck to a Bristol board from Pride 1997. So in this case, a lot of them aren't labeled, but as Dan also said, we will be holding parties or gatherings in the future. Whether that's virtually in person is yet to be determined, but copies of these photographs will be laid out, and then members of the community will be invited to come and name any of these people who are not currently named, and that just helps create more of a full record. In this case, this is interesting. They're stuck on with like a glue or a tape, which so these will all need to be removed and then put into individual photo sleeves to preserve them properly. But I can just go through some of these fun little photos.
So
here.
the history of these is that these were photographs taken by Ross Boutlier, obviously for Pride 1997. And then sometime later, Ross was asked to make a display of his photographs because Ross was known as a pretty good photographer. He is known. And he made up this display. I think the display was made exactly 10 or 20 years after Pride, as an anniversary reminiscence of the 97 event. And so these were made up to be a display. It's a particularly nice donation right now because it gives us something when we're doing a public event. It gives us something to take to the public event that's really quite spectacular. Because Ross has picked his best photos and the most interesting ones. And this is a very visually rich display for us to be to have and show.
That's great, Dan. I had a comment from Rebecca, not to be a Debbie Downer, but we have lost many 2S LGBTQ plus activists, elders over the past few years, Anne Fulton, Marianne Mancini, Tommy Miller, Al Stewart, etc. So any comments on that?
Well, absolutely, and this informs the urgency of our project, and one of the reasons that we're being fairly aggressive at this point is for a couple of reasons. One, we want people to be able to tell their stories, when they have the time and when they have the capacity to tell the stories. We all lose the ability to tell our stories one way or another over time, and so we've got a lot of stories to tell and record, and these are really fantastic narratives. The other thing is that a couple of things happened to these precious archival materials, and the one that we've dealt with a couple of times already is someone needing to downsize in a hurry. I mean, one very common thing is that someone falls, breaks a hip, and is no longer able to live independently. They move into some kind of nursing home or healthcare or assisted living, and someone else has to clean out their apartment, and the someone else almost certainly will not have an accurate idea of the value of the materials they have there. So literally, I mean, your phrase, Jackie, early on in the project is that we're preserving, we're keeping this important historical work from going into the tipster.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you for that, Dan. I appreciate that. Lydia, I had a question for you about how this archive, so we're speaking specifically about the Nova Scotia LGBT Seniors Archive, how it will become part of the Killam Library archives and why that's important.
Right. So it's really important because the Dalhousie University Archives is a established archive and they do have funding, and we are 3 people who don't have a permanent archive or a building. So the support of DAL is really giving this archive a home, which is, really important when you want to have an accessible archive. So that kind of answers that part of the question. How it's going to be integrated into the other collections is, so if you were to go onto the Dalhousie University Archives webpage, you will see a tab that says featured collections. And when this project goes live, the Nova Scotia LGBT Seniors Archive will be listed under the featured collections as its own collection. So you can just toggle to that tab and it will take you to the Nova Scotia LGBT Seniors collection. There are some other ways that you would be able to search for the archive within the finding aid itself, but that would be the most straightforward way, which is also a really valuable thing about having it part of the Dalhousie Archives, is that we have access to the webpage and to their finding aid, and we don't need to kind of figure all that stuff out ourselves.
Yeah. Well, that's great. And you both may recall last October, we had an initial soft launch of this project. And I remember there were a number of students there from Dal Out who basically said, I wish this material was available when I was trying to do projects or papers, or I want to do more projects, papers, or a thesis project on the history of LGBTQ seniors. So thoughts on the importance of making sure that that intergenerational component, which was part of this project, is remains at the forefront.
Yeah, and also just a note on accessibility. Well, these things aren't publicly searchable now. If there's anybody who is interested in accessing certain materials or is doing research on a topic, please get in contact with us and we can look at our files and at what we have, and we are able to provide copies. There may be some copying fees, but we are able to provide people with materials now if they need them for research or other things. Just wanted to throw that in there as well.
Great, thanks for that. And Dan, what are your thoughts on that?
On which? Sorry, Jackie.
The sort of importance of that intergenerational component. So, we're specifically collecting materials from LGBT seniors, but we also heard at the soft launch last October from a number of students from Dal Out and other students that happened to be at that event saying how important it is to have access to this type of material.
I think there's two big chunks. I think the first is the access to the materials and having what I, as a non-archivist and non-librarian, would call an index to the materials, so that someone can say, hey, a bunch of women used to organize an event called She Dogs every summer. I would really like to write a story about how that came about and what it was like. And so I'd like to find out the who, the what, the where, the when, and the why of that. And so what we're doing is building a tool that so that you'll be able to say what materials are available for She Dogs, who was involved, and can I look at some of this at this stuff? Can I look at the society notes? Can I find out what their budget was? This is a historical organization. When was it registered? Who was it registered by? That sort of thing. So part one is allowing people to tell stories in the future. Part two is tell stories in the future from material that we're collecting right now. Part two is getting people to tell stories about things that went on right now in their own voices on either audio tape or either audio recordings or video recordings. And here we have people telling their stories and the stories of their materials in their own voice, and you can hear them talking about the things and telling stories about the materials that they're donating, and that has a huge value. I don't tend to think for this project, I'm not thinking about what people are going to do with the material this year. I am thinking about what people are going to do with this material 100 years from now, or 500 years from now, or 1,000 years from now. And they'll be able to look at this and bring up this recording and hear someone from 100 years ago telling about how they created this event and how exciting it was at the time, and hear the excitement in their voice for that. So that's an element of storytelling that I really love, that we're collecting people telling their own stories live, not on text, not translated into text words. We will be doing an index of these stories. But we will also have the audio and sometimes the video of these stories, and that's really exciting.
Great. Thanks for that, Dan. We did have a comment, I guess, from folks asking if we're okay with posting photos to the website and associated links and references as well. And just for folks who want to know, we have a Facebook page, which is NS, so Nova Scotia, but NS LGBT Seniors Archive. So that's our Facebook page. And in terms of the DAL website, where you can find some materials listed there already, if you go to dal.ca, you go to sites, sorry,
Just
forward slash.
dal.ca/LGBT-archives.
Yeah.
Yeah, and if you just do a search of dal.ca LGBT space archives, Google search, Google should drop you right into that. You'll see a few snippets of highlights from our current work, and you'll see lots of ways to contact us. And if there's something that you think should be there that isn't there, let us know and we'll put it up there. We have access to that.
Yep, that's great. Thanks for that, Dan. And so this is a question for both of you. Can you talk a little bit about the next steps for this project?
Next step is to cope with a exponentially growing list of possible donors, and it's a really exciting and it's really scary because every time you talk to someone, every time you do a collection of some material, someone says, "Oh, you should also talk to James, and you should also talk to Juanita." Because they've got this thing and they've got that thing. So you add James and Juanita to your list, and you guess what happens when you talk to them. So that's kind of the scary thing. So we're just going to keep doing that. The exciting part of that is that you really have no idea when you talk to one of these people what is going to pop out of that box. There's just really exciting things. There's we went and visited one of the leaders of the community a few weeks ago, and we went to her storage closet, and it's filled with parade banners, with 30 and 35-year-old parade banners that were made. You know, some people took a tablecloth, rolled it out on the floor, and a bunch of people got poster paint, and they painted words and symbols on it, stapled it to a couple of sticks, and carried it in the parade. And we have that item in our archives. It's really, we have that, and we have all kinds of promotional materials. We have, we were planning, we owned a building at 2112 Gottingen Street for a while, and we were planning to do huge renovations on it. We have the architect's plans, the plans that the actual architect drew for the renovations to that building that came out of the same group of materials. So really, when you contact someone, you really have no idea what's going to come out of the box. But I found all of it fantastic because I can see, like, every time I look at a box of stuff, even every time I look at an item, I imagine the stories that people are going to be writing about this stuff in the future.
That's great. Thanks, Dan. Did you want to respond to that too, Lydia?
Yeah, I'm actually glad you brought up those huge banners, because that's what's next for me, is figuring out how to preserve all of these materials that archives don't usually accept, like huge 7-foot-long banners that are made of spray paint on tablecloth that are not stable at all. So that's definitely part of what's next. And then also just organizing the launch, which will be in October, and all the promotional events that will come with that is going to be a big job.
Thank you, Lydia. So we had a question from Artist Liaison, which basically says, as you might imagine, there may be people in photos and videos who are not out or who do not want to be identified. What steps do you take to respect individuals' privacy while preserving history? Who would like to go first?
Yeah, I can take that one. Yeah, and that's definitely a concern that we've thought a lot about with this project, more so definitely than some other archival projects I've worked on in the past. And it is really a fine line. So more often than not, the procedure is to name the person, and then if that person gets in contact with us, or somebody who knows them gets in contact with us and says, actually, no, this person doesn't want to be named, they want to remain anonymous, we will immediately take down any reference to them. And then the other part of that is that materials aren't likely going to be donated by people who are not necessarily out. And if they are, we can make them anonymous. But for people who aren't out, who are in photographs, they might not even necessarily be named if they can't be identified. So I don't know if that.
Can I just add one other bit? You talked a little bit about the deed of gift. So there are also ways of people who might want to donate materials who are not currently out, and that those materials remain
Yeah, and
inaccessible.
that's something that can be negotiated in the deed, as well as you can donate materials and say, I want to give these materials, nobody can look at them for 50 years. I don't want anyone to look at them. Or you can donate materials and say, these can only be accessed in person. I don't want these digitized and I don't want them to go online.
Yeah.
And I don't want them to be searchable that way. So things like privacy and copyright can really be protected through the deed of gift if people are feeling anxious about donating materials or about outing themselves or others. That can be one way of going around that, is just putting a protection on the material that says, don't put this online or don't make it public for X number of years.
But the bottom line is we do protect wherever possible people's privacy and confidentiality, and that's negotiated in the process of donation.
Yeah, and if anybody would have a problem with them being named in a photograph, it would, or in any materials, it would come down immediately. We would remove the name.
Right. Thanks for that. Dan, did you want to respond to that?
Yeah, just to say that we thought about that early on in the project because of the nature of this material. It's a little odd for me to be dealing with the very few people who were activists in the 1970s and have gone back into the closet. But people change, circumstances change, and so we do have a process for collecting materials and making sure that the donor and people are named in the material are kept anonymous on request.
Thanks for that. We have a question from Pride Kitten. Thank you, Pride Kitten. Could you repeat the URL again so that it can be put in the comments for people to find? So Dan, do you want to go through that again a little bit slower?
That's dal.ca, dal.ca /LGBT-archives.
Great.
Yeah. Thank you, Pride Kitten.
Okay. Again, last question I think is, again, accessible in person versus online. Lydia, did you want to just clarify a little bit further on that point?
Yeah, so I've been using this term digitization, which I realize that not everybody may be familiar with. So basically that just means I scan materials at a high resolution and then I run them through an image processor and reduce the resolution so that they can be uploaded to our finding aid. Originally, and this still is the ultimate plan, is that all of the materials will hopefully be digitized, but the emphasis or goal of the project right now is to process all of the materials first. So that's the taking everything out of boxes and putting it into new boxes that will put it in the finding aid without a digitized copy of the materials with it. So some things do need to be digitized, like I said, some photographs and some newspapers. But if there is anything when the finding aid goes live that you're searching for and you want a digital copy of, the archive staff are able to digitize materials upon request. So while it may not be on the website, it can still be sent to you by email. And then the other thing is, I'm not sure with COVID restrictions what in-person material is going to look like. So I can't say for sure if the reading room is going to be open or not, but if it does open or when it does open again, it's not restricted to just Dal students, and that's the same for requesting materials be sent to you digitally. It's open for anyone. You just need to get in contact with Dalhousie University archive staff with a reference code or the materials you are interested in, and a digital copy can be sent to you.
Great, thank you for that. Dan, please.
Yeah, and although I'm sure it's not in any way obvious to you because we operate as such a well-oiled machine, we actually have two projects here which are in tiny ways conflict. Project one is to get these materials and stabilize them and make sure that they are safe and stored correctly in the long term and in the very long term. That's one thing. The second thing, and it's kind of more my side, is to be making sure that these materials are accessible to people. That doesn't just mean that someone who asks for a specific thing can get it. It means that someone who is doing a project, say someone wants to write a biography on Lynn Murphy, to be able to come to us and say, what materials do you have on Lynn Murphy? And for us to be identify those materials and say, let us know when you want to come and take a look at them. They're here for you.
Great, thanks for that, Dan. Just in terms of next steps, as we said at the very beginning, we are having a launch event in October. So you'll find more information about that on our Facebook page or on our DAL webpage. I also wanted to mention that we did a little project DAL, which allowed us to raise some funds to continue this project beyond the 2-year funding from Nova Scotia Department of Seniors. We've also had support from Donna Bourne-Tyson, who is the Dean of Libraries at DAL, who has also offered additional assistance with this project. So although we're basically here to talk about the 2 years of funding that we've received from Nova Scotia Department of Seniors to get this project up and running, we have lots of folks who have been supporting the project along the way. And we're just about out of time. So I wanted to just wrap up by thanking our funders, including Nova Scotia Department of Seniors, our partners, our Community Advisory Committee members, those who have contributed their time and materials to the archive. Thank you to Dan, thank you to Lydia. It's fantastic working with both of you. I couldn't ask for a better, I'm going to say intergenerational team. That's a right way to express that. Thank you to Halifax Pride for the opportunity to share with you some of the information about the Nova Scotia LGBT Seniors Archive. And again, you can find additional information about us. Dan, over to you with the URL, slow and steady.
dal.ca, dal.ca/LGBT-archives.
Or you can find more information on our Facebook page, which is NS, LGBT Seniors Archive. You can find that on Facebook. Again, thank you very much, Lydia. Thank you, Dan. Thank you to Halifax Pride, and thank you to our interpreters for all of their hard work in keeping up with us. I know we are fast talkers, I believe. So thank you. And also, if you would like any additional information, my email is jgahagan, JGAHAGAN @dal.ca. So initial J and then last name Gahagan. So JGAHAGAN @dal.ca. And we look forward to hearing from you. And again, thank you so much and happy Pride to everyone. Thank you.